Hello students, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. Today we have come up with another interesting video about a recent threat that Trump has given to the BRICS nation, and this threat is related to the proposal of the BRICS nation where they want to bring an alternative currency to basically what we can say reduce the dollar and the extent of trade that these countries take part in the dollars. Now what Trump can do and what is the practical implications of this threat and what this kind of threat or the move from the dollar based system means for US, India and other countries, we will try to understand this in more detail. So first of all, to give you the context of this particular topic, perceiving these growing attempts as a threat, which Trump believes is a threat to the domination of United States dollar as far as the global trade is concerned, he has threatened the countries such as Brazil, Russia, China, India and South Africa, the 5 main countries, and now today we have BRICS plus also, so many countries have joined this grouping with 100% tariffs. He has said already, he has threatened before. We have talked about, especially we talk about Canada, Mexico and China, that the 20 to 50% of tariffs will be imposed on these countries. Now he has further threatened that if these countries try to create a new BRICS currency or back any of the other currency rather than dollar, or try to replace the US dollar as the world's reserve currency, then they will be imposed with 100% of tariffs on the traded goods. Many countries across the globe have been looking to reduce the dependency on the US dollar, especially if you talk about since the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war in 2021, as well as the US-led global financial system. So in this regard, if you try to understand what exactly is the word that Trump has used, now obviously he posts his thoughts on a social media platform called as Truth Social. So actually there he has commented that the idea that the BRICS countries are trying to move away from the dollar while we stand by and watch is over. So the first statement clearly distinguishes himself as the president who, when he will take the charge, he will not sit and stand by as the last president Joe Biden, and he will take strict action against any such kind of attempt. We require a commitment from these countries that they will neither create a new BRICS currencies nor back any other currency to replace the mighty US dollar. And third, or if they do so, they will face 100% tariff and should expect to say goodbye to sailing into the wonderful US economy. Now these are terms that he generally use all the time, wonderful to represent the US. Okay, if you understand Trump's overall what you can say understanding is based on the Make America Great Again. His policy is largely focused on what we can say is preserving the American interest, or basically we can say giving importance to the American interest first, then thinking about the other countries. It does not matter who that other country is. So before delving deeper into the overall idea of the development of BRICS currency, let us try to understand what is the significance of US dollar as far as the forex reserve, forex we can say transaction across the world is concerned. Now we have taken 2 major time frame here to understand the shift or the changes. So one we have is 1998, other is the recent year of 2022. The data has been taken from the BIS triennial central bank survey that was conducted. Now obviously as you look between the year 1998 to 2022, the dollar has been able to maintain its dominance, its hegemony, and even we can see there is a 1% increase in the overall forex transaction of dollar. In 1998 it was 87%, today it stands at 88%. Apart from that, if we talk about the other currency, we have at the second number Japanese yen, that is 17% as of now, whose share has declined. 13% is where we have the British pound sterling. Then we have the 31% share that you can see is of euro, especially the share of euro has increased here. Earlier it was the German Deutschmark. Now if you remember, we know that in year 2000, somewhere around those time 2004 is when you have the development of eurozone, and that is why the shift of currency from German currency to euro is being observed. Then at 7% we have the Chinese yuan. Now you can see the major growth that has happened here is of Chinese yuan, also called as renminbi. If you compare it with the year 1998, 7% was the figure that was shared by the Swiss franc. Now obviously Switzerland also has shifted to the euro, so Swiss franc share has been consumed in the euro itself, but we have seen the rise of China in this time frame, in this decades, and that is why we can see the increase in the overall share of the Chinese renminbi, and then you have all the other currencies that constitute 41%. In this context, India's share, if you try to understand, as per the same survey, it is reportedly about 1% only. So, very, very insignificant share in forex transaction, global forex transaction we can understand here. And that is why we have one of the major concerns that even if we are able to roll out and push for the BRICS currency alternative to the US dollar system, again there we can see the dominance and hegemony of China. It will be unfavorable to China, especially in the context of trade imbalances that India and China have with each other. Second, if we try to understand apart from this, look at the International Monetary Fund's data in this regard. So, it has clearly stated that as far as the share of dollar in the central bank and government foreign reserves are concerned, there we are seeing a gradual decline. One we have discussed before, the data is about the forex transaction, there the dollar share has not declined, but as far as the share of central bank and government foreign reserves are concerned, dollar share has been declining. However, the most interesting thing we have to understand, the decline or reduction of dollar share is not matched by the corresponding increase in shares of the other big four currencies as they are called. After US dollar, if we talk about the major currencies in which the global trading occurs, that is the euro, yen, that is from Japan, and pound, it is from the UK. So, these shares have not increased, rather due to the decline of US dollar share, we have seen increase in the share of what IMF refer as non-traditional reserve currencies. Non-traditional reserve currencies, example of these are Australian dollar, Singaporean dollar, you have the South Korean won, as well as you have the Chinese renminbi. And in most interestingly, the Chinese renminbi gains here is also significant, and overall 25% of decline that has happened in US dollar share, that has been compensated by the rise of the gains, or what you can say is the gains of the Chinese renminbi in capturing the foreign reserve market or the central bank reserves of different countries. So, from these two discussions about the data that we have from two different surveys, we can easily conclude that if the dollar is getting weaker, it is not the currencies of Eurozone or basically we can say the allied countries of US whose share is rising. It is what we can call as the adversary country of US, that is Chinese share is rising, and China is getting advantage of this particular phenomenon. Now, if we try to understand what has been the India's effort so far for internationalization of rupee or increasing the transaction of rupees for the settlement of trade. So, in this context, Trump's threat, if we look at the timing, it is coming at that time when US has imposed sanctions on Russia that has resulted in the Russian oil being diverted to the Asian countries. Largely China and India has emerged as a major buyer of the Russian oil, and that is why Russia is the one who is responsible for settling the trades in the domestic currencies. So, to facilitate such kind of transaction, the Reserve Bank of India, which is the central bank of India, it has allowed invoicing and payment for international trade in the Indian rupees in 2022 after the sanctions were imposed on the Russia amidst the Ukraine war. However, India's trade with Russia in domestic currency remains low, because though India and Russian we can say trade volume and trade value has increased, what we are witnessing is that there is a fear among the Indian banks that they might face the US sanctions if they engage in any kind of transaction, financial transaction with Russian companies, and an unbalanced trade relationship that these two countries have, India and Russia have, also is a kind of impediment in having any kind of rupee internationalization. Now, let us try to understand this point in more detail. If you look at the Indo-Russia trade volume, till 2021, that means we can say just before the war, the import export was almost same. Overall, if you talk about trade volume has never exceeded $10 billion on annual basis, and we can see the import and export has remained, if you talk about the imports from Russia, it has remained about $4 to $5 billion, export from India has remained in the range of about $2 billion. But what has happened after the war is that Russian oil has been diverted to India, and till now, for the first time in history, Russia has emerged as the biggest exporter of crude oil to India, and that is why we are seeing that there is a sharp, steep increase here of the import from Russia that has gone up to $61 billion. If we talk about the export from India, that has remained low at around $4.26 billion. So India's trade gap with Russia has widened substantially due to the increased import of discounted Russian crude oil after the Ukraine war, and that is why we are saying that if you talk about the Indo-Russia trade, it is not in the favor of India. It is not in the favor of India because India enjoys what we can call as a trade this deficit. So as a result, Russia has huge pile up of rupee reserve because obviously since they cannot transact in US dollar, and also they have been cut off, their entire financial system has been cut off from the SWIFT system that facilitate international transactions. So the Russia can only accept Indian rupee if Indian companies are buying the Russian oil. Due to this reason, what has happened? Russia has a huge pile of rupee reserves, and obviously rupee is not internationalized currency. That means its acceptance outside of India is very, very low. So it has not been able to use this currency, rupee currency, to settle bilateral trade because obviously Russia is buying a very small amount of goods from the India. So most of the rupee that Russia had, it has invested in the Indian stock market as well as in buying of Indian bonds. So this is one of the major concerns that we can raise if we are talking about the future of the BRICS currency. Now, since Trump has alleged that the countries are trying to go through and find an alternative to US dollar, which he considered as a threat to the US financial system, what is the stance of India? Let us try to understand. Now, the stance of India can be simply understood if you look at the statement given by the External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. S. Jaishankar. So he said that while India is pursuing its trade interest, the example is obviously India has the opportunity to buy the cheap Russian oil, which it has not shied away from. Avoiding the use of US dollar is not part of India's economic policy. So India is not deliberately trying to go through, or basically we can say trying to delegitimize, or we can say participate in de-dollarization phenomena that we are witnessing today. US policies often complicate trade with certain countries, and India is seeking workarounds without intending to move away from the dollar, unlike some other nations. Obviously, India as of now does not have any kind of threat due to the dominance of US dollar. Also because if we talk about the US-India relations since 1990s, and especially we can say since 2004 after the signing of nuclear framework, civil nuclear cooperation agreement, it has continuously strengthened, and India and US can be considered even today as a strategic partner. So India as such do not have any kind of threat as the Russia and China sees from the US hegemony, US dominance. So he said that we must decide whether to forego dealings with trade partners who lack dollars. For example, now China, if we talk about Russia, it cannot do the trading and exchange in the US dollars, or find alternative settlements that work. There is no malicious intent toward the dollar. That means basically what India is trying to say, that whatever proposals that they are participating in, they are thinking about, it is not to basically have, it is not with a malicious intent toward the dollar, rather it is the only logical solution if India want or continue to keep trading with such countries who do not or who cannot participate in dollar trade or dollar based trade. However, he also had added that a multipolar world will eventually be reflected in the currencies and economic dealings in the future. Obviously, we know that due to the continuous rise of China, we already have seen two best examples where the share of Chinese renminbi has been increasing. Now, this share has been increasing because of the rapid economic growth that China has witnessed. So, similarly, other countries including India, if and when they start to have a significant what we can say share in the global trade, obviously their currencies will also start to increase their share, and if the share of these currencies start to increase, obviously we will see the downfall or we will see the decline in the share of US dollar. That is not because of some malicious intent again, that is simply a reflection of a world turning from unipolar or bipolar to multipolar in nature. So this is overall what Dr. S. Jaishankar has summed up as far as India's stance about the de-dollarization is concerned. Now, if you look at the threats that Donald Trump has given, that 100% tariff can be imposed on these countries, let us try to understand, is these threats practical or is it counterproductive to US also? So many experts argue that while the US dollar dominates the global trade, accounting for over 90% of transaction, we have discussed it is not the only currency used internationally. We talk about the big four such as Japanese yen, we have then euro, we have the UK pound. So these currencies are also being used, and US has never objected to their uses. So when talking about the BRICS currency, it's not be considered as something very revolutionary which will significantly cut into the US dollar's hegemony. Rather, this is simply an extension of the existing alternatives itself. And it is the action of the United States that have pushed many countries to seek alternatives to the US dollar. So it is not something also that has emanated from these countries. It is because of the actions of US. That is what experts argue, because when US has weaponized the SWIFT system by cutting off Iran earlier and then Russia later, obviously the countries who are having a strong trade relationship with these countries, they have to find the alternative, and the BRICS currency is one of the way to do so. Now, whether it will materialize or not, we will have to wait, watch. So, what we can say in conclusion, that as far as the India's stance is concerned, India's approach is concerned, it should ensure the framework does not disproportionately favor China, because again, even if you talk about the conception of BRICS currency, there, because of the Chinese, we can say, China is having such a huge asymmetry in economic power. It is much more economically powerful as compared to the other countries. So we should ensure that it is not disproportionately favor China among the BRICS countries. We should accelerate the development and internationalization of the digital currencies, that is CBDC, standing for Central Bank Digital Currencies, and financial platforms like UPI to take a leadership role in the BRICS currency initiative. In this regard, if we talk about outside of India, the countries such as UAE, Maldives, they have begun to accept, even in Singapore, there is news of the UPI, Indian UPI being accepted as a valid payment method. So this is something that we should try to, first of all, put our approach towards. Now for India, if we talk about what is the best course, so we have to take a very balanced approach. So first, we obviously have to support the financial reforms within the BRICS that align with the interest. And second, we also have to maintain a strong ties with the United States, because even if we talk about in the economic terms, US is the largest trading partner of India, to safeguard its broader strategic and economic priorities. So that is how we can sum up the conclusion. Now, if you try to understand that what kind of question may be asked in the mains examination from these news, so one of the examples we have written here, that we have to study the international relations, we have to study the multilateral and bilateral institutions and organizations. So in the context of recent threats by United States, analyze the impact of being part of proposed BRICS currency framework as far as India is concerned. So you can try to think and write and properly structure the answer to this particular question. That is all about this particular video. I hope you understood overall about what is the overall what you can say rationale behind the recent threats being used by the President-elect of US, Donald Trump, against the BRICS currency framework. That is all for this particular video. Thank you very much.